All right, welcome to the Weekly Fix. I'm your host, Zayne Worley, with Jacob Rutherford here. Um, this is the first one, so it's going to be a journey with us, and we're really excited. We're going to share some of our passions. If you're along for the ride, what we're into, what we're watching, collecting, playing, and pretty much anything else that we want to mention. So, um, Jacob, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, this has been a process just getting to where we're at right now, getting our first podcast going. I mean, if it wasn't me postponing it because I was doing something else or busy, it was us not being able to get the software to work. So hopefully, you guys actually enjoy. Those of you that do listen to the podcast actually enjoy what we put out because this has not been an easy thing. This has been months in the making because I postponed it for forever, just trying to figure out a name. We
Yeah,
finally
we
came
we
up with a name
definitely.
that we both liked.
I think we went through over 35 names that were
It
like
might have been
actually
more.
serious. Well, serious contender of names was probably
Yes,
35.
serious contenders probably 35, but I mean, just names thrown out there, well into the hundreds, I would say. I mean, we were just rattling off stuff, and none of them sticked. And then finally, we found this one. I liked it. He liked it. So now here we are, finally getting to record the first podcast, and I'm excited.
I am too. Um, currently we're both in different states, so we're recording this satellite style. Jacob's back in West Virginia. I'm down here in Florida, so we also don't have video this time, but we're going to look at maybe doing that in the future. But we will give a spoiler warning because some of the stuff we're talking about, I'm sure some people haven't had some time to see yet. We're going to be talking about Ahsoka today, and then we won't give spoiler warnings for the other stuff that we talk about today because you've had plenty of time to look at that. We actually had a conversation going on yesterday that we're gonna bring back up on the podcast because I gotta
Oh
I gotta
man,
hear.
here we go. Here
we
we
gotta
go.
we gotta kind of hash some of this stuff out. Just gotta go for it. So
Well, let's start with the Ahsoka talk. I know me personally, I have been absolutely loving the show. I feel like, as big of a Star Wars fan as I am, there hasn't been anything recently that I don't like. I feel like I've enjoyed everything, but I feel like this has really just elevated it to back to what it used to be. I,
I I would have to completely agree. I have absolutely, and I wasn't even a Star Wars fan for a lot of my like growing up years because um, I wasn't allowed to be. Star Wars was not cool enough to be watched in my household. So I actually only was allowed to watch Star Wars if I was like with my cousin, who was a huge Star Wars fan. And so my love for Star Wars, I always loved it, and like it was awesome to watch. But I never really got to dive deep into it, like I have since I've been able to watch my own stuff.
See, but that's also I can get where you can come from like point of view that that's a bad thing. Like it kind of sucked that you had to wait, but there's also a good aspect to it because like now that you actually understand how to watch shows, like what to look for in shows, you kind of got to see a lot more that like me for example, I missed a lot of stuff watching it when I first watched Star Wars because I was a little kid, right? So I didn't know what I was looking for. I was just watching lightsabers get swung around and just thought it was the coolest thing in the world, but you get to come at it from a standpoint of like how to understand a plot point. You get to actually think about what's happening, so you actually get like your first intake of Star Wars probably is a little more fun in a way because you actually got to enjoy the story for what it is rather than just loving combat because you're a little kid.
So I would agree with that, but also I do have I still got to watch them as a little kid, so I still have like the love for the prequels, even though they have their flaws, and like I know a lot of people really don't like the prequels. I absolutely adore them, um, because they're so like reminiscent of my childhood. Like even though I didn't get to dive deep into them and watch them on repeat, when I did watch them, they were the best thing I'd ever seen. So it's definitely not a super negative. I'm not sad that I didn't get to dive deep into it as a kid. Um, but it is fun now to kind of get to experience. Like I watched the Clone Wars for the first time this year. I finished it, so that was really cool. Now some of it, was a struggle. It wasn't all great, but watching that, and then I had to watch Rebels to prepare for Ahsoka because I hadn't seen that either, so I got to watch that and really enjoy that, and that was really cool.
Well, you're talking to someone that loves the prequels. I mean, the prequels are my favorite era of Star Wars. So, you saying you love the prequels, you're not gonna ever hear me disagree with anything you had to say about that. But talking about getting to watch Clone Wars and Rebels for the first time this year, that's what I'm talking about. Though, like you get to really, I feel like when I watched Clone Wars, I was like just watching it to watch it, whereas like you kind of watched it with a purpose.
Oh,
Which
I
I've
definitely
gone
did.
back and watched it with a purpose since, and it's way better.
It
But
is.
when you just are
Dude,
watching it to watch it just for Star Wars intake, I feel like it's really not. There's a lot of episodes that just are way out there. They're not very enjoyable.
well, they
Um,
can go over your head so quick. Like, especially like even I'm thinking about we're gonna be talking about the world between worlds, but also gonna be diving into the Mortis gods probably pretty soon, and that whole episodes with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka and Anakin. With the father, the son, and the daughter, like I'm sure as a little kid, like that was just like, what am I watching?
yeah, it
But
made
then like,
no sense. You're
and
like you get introduced to these characters you have never seen before. They're
you,
the most powerful beings that you could have ever seen before,
and it's two
and this
episodes.
whole world is just different. You
It's
know,
two episodes,
Yeah,
and
and it's
that's
two
how.
episodes. So if you don't understand it in those two episodes, you don't ever see it again. So as a kid, you're like, okay, hey, that was cool. I guess I got to see Anakin be ultra powerful for 15 seconds, but like that's it. So
Well, and
that's what I'm
Ahsoka
saying. Like getting
dies. She
what is
literally
it?
died. She literally died. She
Yeah, like
literally
one of
died
them
in that
dies.
episode.
So like, so like getting to watch it as an adult and actually understanding some stuff. I mean, it's probably a lot better than like when I watched it. I was just like, what in the world was that? Like, so.
Yeah. And
But
then also getting to watch it as a completed work as opposed to
having to
and
wait weekly for it and stuff.
now I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you something about Jacob here. Jacob hates
Oh,
binge watching.
yes.
So I don't even know if you would be able to watch the Clone Wars all 7 seasons
Oh, it would take me
again.
a couple
It would
months.
take you years. It would take
It
you
might.
years.
Like, I know the last time I watched it all the way through, I think it took me 3 months
Well,
to watch it.
that's actually super quick for as much content as is there.
It is a lot of content. But what I would do is a lot of the time, I do this a lot with shows nowadays, where I get an hour-long lunch break at work. Usually I'll just go out to my car and just throw an episode on for my lunch break, watch it while I eat, and then head back into work. So that's kind of been my way of like, if I'm behind in a show, which a show we're probably going to talk about at some point, which I just started, like Invincible, that's what I would do with a show like that. I'd go out on my lunch break, watch one episode, and then head back in. So that's how I kind of catch up on stuff that I'm very far behind in. So
Because it is time consuming to stay up on everything that's going on.
Oh, especially with as much content. I mean, we talk about Marvel has slowed down drastically, but there was, and I am a fan of constant content, but I do like it when it comes out in weekly episodes, like we see with Star Wars, like we see with Marvel. But if
And
you got
it's
behind with
quality.
Marvel, I mean, you're behind. It's going to take a long time to catch up.
Yeah, me and my wife are currently working our way through the MCU, and we're like 2 months in currently, and
Yeah.
we just finished Eternals last night, and then we're halfway through WandaVision. So
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, when you start talking about if you're someone that I have a friend I work with that hasn't watched any of the MCU until he started to this year. And just getting through the movies is one thing, but then when you get to the shows, I mean, you have 7 or 8 hours just of one show you have to watch through, opposed to like just 1 2 hour movie. So that
yeah,
brings a whole nother level of, it's like a grind. It really is a grind trying to catch up on some of this stuff.
it is, and it's frustrating for those new fans. But I'm gonna be honest, there's not too many new fans,
I feel
and
I could agree with that. I feel like a lot of the people that
and
are watching now have been watching.
and I think it's kind of the same. It's becoming something bigger, right? So it's becoming something similar to what you would be if you were say, hey, I want to get into comic books. Um, You get a good comic book, you read it. Oh, I don't know where this character came from. And if you want to learn more about that, then you go back and read more of that stuff. And you don't have to know everything to enjoy a comic book. And if you did, you would never start because there's
Oh, and
just too much.
yeah, and at the same point, you would never stop because there's always going to be something new. Um, so
And I
yeah, I
but
I
I
agree
think
with
that's
that.
good. I think that's good because there's usually something for everybody. And then there's just, there's always going to be that next thing, that next idea, that next cool thing that comes out. And comic books are incredible in that aspect that, hey, you can read them all or you can read a few of them and you're still going to get a cool story regardless of if you know everything.
And I feel like comics almost do a better job of that than shows because especially with shows nowadays, how often do you can't really watch a show anymore and it's its own thing. I mean, it's
Yep.
going to especially if you're talking about Marvel, it's going to tie into something else. Or it's going to have come from something else that you had to have watched previously to really fully appreciate it. Where I feel like comics do a better job of, hey, here's this standalone story. There is other stuff out there if you want to learn more, but this story does make sense by itself.
Yeah, dude, can you imagine watching WandaVision without seeing any of the MCU? Like,
It makes no sense. It would just
you
be
you
probably
wouldn't
the
make it.
biggest confusion of a show.
You wouldn't watch the second episode.
Heck,
You
I
you
almost didn't want to watch the second episode, and I knew what was happening. You
yeah.
know,
See,
I
I'm a
mean, sure
huge
that show
sick.
has a great payoff, but like the first episode, you're like, "What did I just watch?" You know?
So I actually love sitcoms, and rewatching it, like, I was still just as happy as the first time. I was like, oh, this is like, it's so quirky, it's so weird, it's so unusual, and like I'm all about it. Um, and then that, I used to always watch King of Queens and Everybody Loves Raymond and Seinfeld and grew up on The Office, so all of those sitcom-esque things just really resonated with me.
Well, I guess if you come from that point of view, this show was probably like a dream.
Oh, it was,
You're like
dude. I was
Marvel and a sitcom.
Yeah, it was so good. I remember watching that weekly and just like I could not wait for Wednesday.
Now, I will say, we're talking about Marvel shows, and I know we want to get back to Ahsoka. A little bit more about the podcast, though. We are going to try to keep these right around an hour in
Right around an
length.
hour at max, right? We may have a short week, or we may have just a little segment that we want to cover. If we want to put out something big happens or something,
Hmm.
jump on and record something and talk about it. But yeah, we generally don't want to get it over an hour because that who wants to listen to us ramble for
Well,
two
and in the
hours?
same frame of mind, I mean, we might have episodes that do go over an hour if something big happens or there's something we're really enjoying talking about. We really do want this podcast to be something flexible. Um, so that's something you guys can look forward to, whether it just be an hour of your week, maybe it'll just be a 45 minutes, or maybe it'll be an hour and a half. This is going to be hopefully a weekly podcast, barring, scheduling conflicts and stuff like that. But I think we usually have a pretty good schedule that we at least can get together and get something done every week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing we do, I think, in the future, we've talked about a little bit. We might have some guests on every once in a while. Maybe another one of our friends that wants to talk on here, or maybe the podcast does really well and we can get some other guest people on here. I think that's something we'd like to do. But for the most part, you guys are
Down
probably
the
just going to be
line.
hearing our voices for the most part.
Yeah, I do like the idea of having extra, inputs in it because it can be because we both just love this stuff so much. It is fun to kind of bring in some people who don't love it as much to kind of see what they think of it if they've watched it. But
I 100% agree with that because I've actually, we're going to start talking about Ahsoka. And I think this is a great segment to get into Ahsoka. One of my favorite things has been watching people that didn't watch Rebels watch Ahsoka and see if they can enjoy it as much. Because I know Ahsoka is, even Dave Filoni has says, it's like the next season of
yeah, it's
Star
season
Wars
5 of
Rebels.
Rebels.
It is season 5. Like, for instance, my brother has been watching it with me. He didn't watch all of Rebels. I think he maybe watched the first season of it, and then he just really didn't have time to get back and finish the rest of it. Since Ahsoka has come out, though, it has been something he has been much intrigued to go back and do. But as far as he's concerned, he's actually really enjoyed the show itself, even not even knowing all these things that we know about Rebels. So I was curious as to what your thought is, if you think this is a show that people that are more casual fans, there's a lot of people, especially recently with Disney doing this live action universe of Star Wars, that have really only watched these new shows. So,
So actually, it's super interesting because I watched Mandalorian season 1 and season 2 without watching the Clone Wars.
okay.
So now Mandalorian has nowhere near the tie-ins that Rebels does. Like we said, it's
Definitely
more of
not.
a continuation. But I never felt like I was like missing out on something because the story itself was so good. And so I think Ahsoka has less setup, um, significantly than Mando, but it doesn't really need it. You know Star Wars, you know who the characters are, you know that there's good and there's evil, and it's just building. And the more you know, the more you're going to enjoy, but I don't think you're not going to enjoy it if you haven't seen it. And that's
I
kind of
think
where
the
I'm
same
at.
thing. I think the same thing. Like my brother, he's been enjoying Ahsoka a ton, and he didn't watch Rebels. He hasn't watched all the Clone Wars either. So I mean, if you haven't watched both of those, there's a lot of things that like while we're watching, I'll be freaking out about. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're seeing this character, or they brought this up, and he's just kind of like, oh, it's just cool, just because of what it is, which I
Yeah,
think
you're
is a
like,
really
"Oh
good
man,
thing that
that's
Ahsoka does.
the Battle of Mandalore." And he's like
Exactly.
have, you know, wow, that guy has horns on his head. And you're like,
it
"Oh my
but that
goodness."
is the cool thing, is it still has that wow factor because it is Star Wars. Like, oh, that does just look, it's visually pleasing. So
Yeah. And it is, and that's kind of what I feel like the sequel trilogy lost, was the visually pleasing aspect of it with the choreography of the fights and like the planning and the storytelling. I felt like Ahsoka's really kind of bringing that back, where it's got some of the choreographed fight feel of the prequels,
mhm.
and but yet it's still like next level visuals. Especially, I mean, just think we're getting this for a TV show. This isn't a blockbuster movie that we're seeing. Like, this is the visuals we're getting on a weekly TV show, which is just insane.
It really is crazy what they have done, considering we get usually right around 40-45 minutes a week of just one show. I think they do a really good job of showcasing everything Star Wars has to offer in those 45 minutes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, so going through Ahsoka and just kind of talking about it, like, so let's see, like, what you recap. Like, let's hear your story. Like, what do you think the story has been so far? We find ourselves the week before episode 6. Like, what do you
Well,
what do you think it is?
and with this, we have 2 episodes left. I think. I guess we got this upcoming episode, and then episode 6, and then episode, or is there 8 episodes? So we might have three
There's
if you
8.
look at it.
No,
Yeah.
we only have 2 left.
Okay,
So
so two
so
left.
yeah, so episode 7 is Tuesday actually. So we've seen episode 6.
Okay, yeah, that's true. So we've seen episode 7, and then we have episode 8. So yeah, 2 episodes left, and I feel like this is one thing that I feel like a lot of shows do, especially nowadays, is they wait too long to get started. And I feel like the thing that Ahsoka has done is it got going really fast, and I love that about the show. But I also feel like it's really just starting because of where it went with this last episode. Like I said, we're going to warn you guys. This part of the podcast is going to be pretty spoiler heavy. So if you haven't had a chance to catch up on Ahsoka, now's your time to click off. But I do feel like the story has been very fast to grow, which I love. But it also feels like we're just getting started. Like the fact we have 2 episodes left is like sad to me because I feel like we're really getting into the meat of this story.
Well, yeah, we have 2 episodes left, and Ahsoka hasn't reached the galaxy yet, the new galaxy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So like we're finally getting to see some of these characters. I mean, we just saw the first live action of Ezra. We saw the first live action Thrawn. I mean, we're starting to see some crazy. We're seeing some new Night Sisters. And while the show was going, I don't feel like the show was being slow. But I feel like now it's even hit another pace, which is faster than it was already going.
And so this was the hot take that I texted you about, that I was
Okay.
like, I'm gonna save it for the podcast.
Okay.
So I personally feel like we are gonna get zero conflict resolution in this season. I feel
Which
like I feel like we are completely going to be cliffhangered completely out.
now, me personally, I love that. I do not mind a show ending like that on a cliffhanger. I'd almost prefer it. I am not a fan personally. As much as I love The Mandalorian, I have disliked how most of the seasons of The Mandalorian have ended in a way that you could be done with the show.
Well, I think that's just because they didn't know it was going to keep going.
Oh, and I do get that. I agree. I think that is probably the big reason why they did. I mean, after the first season, they didn't. I don't think they ever dreamed it was going to be what it was. I
And
think
I think you just have to be so careful with a title like Star Wars, right?
you do,
You
because
can't
there's so many
create this
things that can
thing.
happen.
Yeah, you can't create an empty plot thread in Star Wars and ruin, this masterpiece that's been created. Even though, say what you may say about the sequels, um, but it's a completed work, right?
It is,
And if
yeah,
you leave a thread untangled, then it's gotta be fixed. You can't
yeah.
leave that. So I think that's what Mandalorian was testing the waters, but Disney has all the faith in the world, and Dave Filoni obviously, and they just so I didn't know that they had greenlit his um, Heir to the Empire movie, and that
Yes,
that was the official title.
that's what we had talked about. I guess a couple weeks ago now. I had brought up that he's supposed to be bringing Star Wars back to the movie theaters, which, oh, that is like a dream come true to me. I mean, the last I know we talked recently a little bit about the sequels. I do think the sequels were very visually pleasing in a fact that you said that you didn't think they were. I think as far as the way they looked, I think it's some of the most incredible like movie the way a movie can look we've ever seen. Like
Oh,
the
so
because
so I said choreographed. Like the
yes, that's what I was
fight
about to get
scene
to. The
wasn't beautiful.
choreography was terrible, but
Yeah,
I do think
horrible.
how the movies looked visually were incredible. So I
Yeah,
think that
I
he is
agree.
going to be able to bring that back to movies. I cannot wait to see what his Heir to the Empire. It's going to be amazing.
I you know I'm really excited for where this ends, right? And the beauty that it's going to be to completely, if he is able to create a movie, or and I've even been hearing whispers of a trilogy,
Yep,
prequel to the sequels,
yep,
which would be, really fitting for what we know this world has been built. We have so many Jedi that have lived between Order 66 and now are living past the original trilogy.
yep.
How does that get cleaned up and fit into the sequels that were built? And I think they're doing a really good job with this major threat. Now, you absolutely adored episode 5. You gave it, what'd you say, like a 15 out of 10?
Yes,
And I was a little bit less on the bandwagon. I actually told one of my friends that I enjoyed episode 6 more than episode 5. And that's not a bash on episode 5, but I think that's a high praise on how good episode 6 storytelling was.
I think I don't know that I would say six was better, and I feel like I love five so much because of the fangirl in me. Literally was just freaking out the whole time. I mean, we saw Anakin again, like actually saw him. Um, one of my
And
favorite
properly.
characters in all of Star Wars, Captain Rex. Finally seeing a live action version, even though he only got to say one line. Just seeing him in live action, I was just like, this was literally made for me. I had that feeling. But I do agree with how good Episode 6 was. I can't argue if you like 6 better than 5. I can't argue any of that because it was
Yeah.
truly.
And a lot of my dis I episode 5 was incredible, and I'm not saying it wasn't, but there's a big part of me that I love the how it works
Mhm,
part. And there's so many questions that, if they get answered, it could be, the best episode of all of Star Wars.
mhm,
But if those don't get answered for me, it's going to be like, oh man, I really wish you would have answered this. And what I'm referring to is the world between worlds.
yep.
Hey, what is Anakin? Where did he come from? How did Ahsoka get there? How did she get out? Like, tell me, like, you've built the stage. And for those who don't know, Rebels, the world between worlds was really developed in Rebels.
Mhm.
And it was a portal that Ezra Bridger, who we got to see in episode 6, was able to open using the Force with a mural that had the Mortis gods on it. And they had the what is it? The wolves. What's the name
The
of the
Loth Wolves.
wolves? The Loth Wolves portal created, and he was able to walk into it. And he actually was able to save Ahsoka from an earlier fight with Darth Vader.
Mhm.
Darth Vader was going to kill her at a Sith temple, and he pulled her out of time into the world between worlds. Now that's how they entered it, through portals. Um, and somebody from the world between worlds had to grab and pull. So now I'm curious. Was there a portal in the water that she fell through? Was Anakin able to save her, like the power that he was promised to save the ones that he loved? What happened to allow that to happen? Like, what
Well, I love that you
happened?
brought up the power to save the ones you love, because that's when I saw someone, I think, make a post about that on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and that just really made Star Wars like finally come full circle. It felt like finally Dave Filoni gave Anakin the justice he deserved. Which a lot of people complain about the sequels kind of destroying what Star Wars was, because they almost made Rey look like the chosen one, because Anakin or Darth Vader didn't really kill Palpatine in Episode 6. He kind of just transferred his Force essence. And I agree with all those things. I hated how they treated that aspect of it in the sequels. But if Dave Filoni is kind of able to write this story in a way that, what, Anakin's true story is to be the balance of the Force, which is kind of what I think we are gonna see if they do want to explain how he showed up in the world between worlds. I think he's almost taking on that Mortis father
Yes,
type role where
that's what I
he
wanted to
is.
mention.
Yes, I think he's kind of gotten to the point where he is the balance of the Force.
And that's also incredibly beautiful, because I don't know who all has played The Force Unleashed, but we see Starkiller, is his Darth Vader's apprentice. So
Mhm.
he has two apprentices. He has Ahsoka, who was literally given the life force of the daughter of the Mortis
Mhm.
gods, and then he has his Starkiller apprentice, who we could see in a future.
Yeah, which we do need to mention. Starkiller technically isn't canon as of
Yet,
now.
yet.
Yes, I agree. I love you saying yet, because if they are to bring Starkiller into Star Wars, and I think you've probably referring to the picture I saw floating around where they show Anakin as the father, Ahsoka as the daughter, and then Starkiller as the son, kind of representing
Yes.
all. I think that would just be peak writing if they are able to pull off something that makes sense. But I do think that's kind of what they were hinting at in that World Between Worlds episode, is Anakin has become the father of the Force. He is the one bringing balance to all of the Force. So if that is what they were referring to, which is what I hope they're referring to, I think that was
and
amazing. I really
and
love that story.
I love that as well. I really wish they would have given a little bit more. And honestly, I would have been satisfied with how they got in there. Like, I would have loved to even seen, like, just for a split second, instead of her waking up on the world between worlds,
Hmm.
seeing maybe Anakin pull her out of the water into the world between worlds.
Well, and
Like,
that's
even
also a thing I see a lot of people, posting and commenting and stuff about, is a portal isn't necessarily visible if you're the one that's being pulled through it.
exactly, there was no visible portal for
Wh-
Ahsoka
Yes, when
at the
she was fighting
temple.
Darth Vader, she didn't know that, she didn't see any of that. All that happened was, next thing she knew, she was in a whole another world.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting that, they're like, "Oh, why didn't we see Anakin pull her through?" I mean, we would never have seen that portal, period. So I feel like a lot of people need to, there's a lot of things that do need answered. I think that might not necessarily be one of them personally, but this is kind of one thing he was hinting at earlier in the podcast, one of our little debates being, I personally do enjoy when shows leave certain things up to
Oh,
interpretation,
goodness
which
gracious.
you are not a fan of.
So here is the difference. So I feel that that's perfectly fine if it's not crucial to the story, or if in doing so it's lazy writing. I don't think this was lazy writing,
Okay.
and I'm not saying that. What he's referring to is Moon Knight, and I think
Yes.
that was lazy. I think that was incredibly lazy, and I think it was a budgetary issue. And they should have done it, but they couldn't.
Yeah,
For
what he's talking
budgetary
about,
reasons.
especially is in Moon Knight, is when we would see Moon Knight switch between his personalities. We never saw the Jake version of Moon Knight actually
Now
on
hold
the
on.
show.
We'll get to that because
We'll get to it. We'll get to it. But let's
because
keep our Ahsoka talk going for
yeah,
now.
let's stay on our Ahsoka talk. I mean, because I'm ready for this combo, man.
He's been thinking about this since yesterday, since we
Yeah,
had this little text debate.
yeah, because he said it's perfectly acceptable, and I am not on that bandwagon.
Well, see, and that's what we're talking about the world between worlds. I was okay with them not explaining how Anakin was there. I was okay with them not showing us Ahsoka falling in, or not showing us how she technically left. I do like the idea of leaving that part up to interpretation,
And
which
I'm
it
okay
sounds
with
like
that
you did
too.
to an extent.
I'm okay with it. It just
Yeah,
drops it for me. If you explain that, that gives me more enjoyment in it because now
yeah.
I'm understanding more about this fantasy world that I love so much. And in episode 5, I also felt like the pacing was a little bit off for me. It was
Okay,
very slow with Hera and Jason. Now, I really liked what they did with Jason there and showing his force sensitivity
I
and
love
like,
that.
call back to Rebels. I know he's the son of Kanan and Hera, so Kanan being the lead Jedi in that series. And so like that was awesome to see him, but it was so slow in that like first search, and I'm begging to get back to it. I'm
I,
like,
I do think
show me
they.
Ahsoka.
Yeah, I do. I will agree with that part of the episode. Episode 5 did kind of linger with the Hera and Jason. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised. I think we talked about it this past episode 6. I thought we weren't going to see Sabine at all. I thought this was all going to be a Hera episode. So the fact that they, got back to Sabine and what's actually happening was really a good thing for me, because
I
I
don't
was
think we'll
fully
see.
expecting this to be a full Hera and them trying to figure out how to get to Peridia.
And I personally don't think we'll see Hera again.
Okay, so you think that was her
I think
last?
I think that was her going back to get court-martialed, and she's gonna deal with all the diplomacy, and get her ranking of general stripped, and she'll have to deal with that. Because personally, I don't think they're coming back.
This
Um,
season?
I don't think Ahsoka's coming back this season. So I think Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine are gonna get trapped on at the other galaxy, and I think that's going to be the cliffhanger. I think Thrawn is going to return, and they're going to be able to leave, and I think that they're going to be stuck.
I've heard a lot of different things. I think the most thing I've been hearing theorized recently is more so what Thrawn's army is. I mean, I am definitely under the belief that these are not actual stormtroopers anymore. I definitely think these are dead stormtroopers being animated by the Night Sisters' magic, similarly to how we saw Merrick
Maybe
earlier in
that's
the
because
series.
Thrawn ate all their food. You know.
He's gotten a little thick. I mean,
So
I guess he's not been able to do a whole lot. So, um,
I love his demeanor. It was amazing. I do like with as so honestly, I do wish he was a little more fit and not a hit to anything, but it's just his character is so like disciplined and to
yes,
the
he is.
point and fit like he would have never let himself physically go.
I do like though that they are letting Lars Mikkelsen voice be.
Uh,
I do think that
Absolutely.
that does save it, because
It
when you hear
does.
him
No,
speak,
it's completely
it is
it's
Thrawn.
it's Thrawn. It's Thrawn
Yeah,
100%, and I completely agree. If I have no issue with it, I can completely overlook it, but I'm like, oh man, that is a little bit visually out of character. But
you
he
notice
is
it
so
especially
perfectly.
in that right towards the end when he's looking at like the map. I feel
Yeah,
like that's when you see him marching out for the first time. I didn't really notice it, but I think they just need to do a better job of angling these cameras, because that one did him dirty. I mean, they really showed off. I was like, that camera angle could have been a little better.
well,
But
so
I am
I
happy that they're letting Lars Mikkelsen be Thrawn, because I think we would be more upset
Oh,
if
if the
it just
voice
didn't
was bad.
sound like him.
No, I completely agree. And
Yeah.
so I can completely overlook that because the voice is perfect, his
Yep.
pitch is perfect, his delivery is perfect. It's Thrawn. And that is like such a iconic presence.
Yep.
And it has to be right.
And I think they just absolutely nailed it. And I know a lot of people, like, for instance, we were talking about the people that only watch the live action Star Wars and haven't watched, the cartoons and stuff like that. They might not have cared as much. They might have
Oh,
preferred
for
something a
sure.
little bit. But I feel like that was 100% a fan service, which I feel like Ahsoka has been a huge fan service so far. I
It's
feel like it
yeah,
has
for sure.
been
But it's been
tailored for
quality
people that
story.
love Star Wars.
It's been quality story though.
Yeah,
And that's the big thing. So fan service for fan service sake is bad. Fan
yeah, yeah,
service
100%.
with story is the best type of story in my
Yep,
opinion. Um, a lot of people dunk on Spider-Man No Way Home because the story wasn't great for some people, and that they just told a bad story to get fan service. That's not what this is. This is an amazing story that has all the fan service you could
yeah.
ask for.
It really. I mean, every episode, I'm like, what are they going to show me that I'm going to be excited to see just because I'm a fan of Star Wars? But how good is the story going to continue to be? I mean, it's literally the best of both worlds. I mean,
I
as a
completely agree.
consumer of content, I don't think we could have asked for anything better, even if I wasn't a Star Wars fan. Just as a straight up story, it has been phenomenal.
And yeah, so I'm a Marvel junkie first, Star Wars junkie second, and
Hmm.
this is just amazing. I do want to touch back on those stormtroopers because
Okay.
their suit, the did you see like the gold inlays?
Yes.
Um, so like the kintsugi. Uh, do you know what kintsugi pottery is?
I no, I don't.
So kintsugi pottery is a Japanese style of pottery where
Uh huh.
they make a beautiful piece of pottery and then they break it and then they put it back together with gold.
So that's kind of what they were.
I think that's what they're pulling from because Dave Filoni loves samurais and Ahsoka's so
Oh,
samurai
heavily.
heavy.
Yes.
You got to see her different stances and her strong stance samurai fight scenes in episode 4 and 3, I believe. And so I think this is just another reference to that culture um, of what is it? Who is the his first general with the face mask was
Enoch.
very Enoch. Enoch was very samurai esque Roman soldier-esque, and then all of their suits were so like broken and put back together. So I think that actually goes to your point that you think they're reanimated dead, because even their suits look like they've been broken and put back together. So their bodies have been broken and reanimated, kind of
Yep.
put back together. I think that's a really good visual play to demonstrate what's going on the inside.
And I think just I mean they look cool.
They
Like
look awesome, dude.
stormtroopers are cool, right? Stormtroopers are cool, but they totally elevated just the basic stormtrooper, and they couldn't have done it for a better character to lead them than Thrawn. So
No.
not only is Thrawn already this just I mean, he's Grand Admiral. I mean, everyone's heard the stories. The end of the Mandalorian, people were like, "Oh, Thrawn's coming back." I mean, people were intimidated. Now he has this intimidating army to go along with him. I think it's just perfect. I mean, I love what they are doing.
And even the red kind of plays to the Night Sister
Exactly, like the little bit of
company.
like the
Yeah,
yarn kind of stuff, the ties and everything.
doing so much with the visual, like just so many. I think, and that's why Thrawn, that Sabine, her journey, her fight, her finding Ezra, like just, and then dude, we're in a new galaxy. We're in a new
Dude,
galaxy. Like this
it's
is
crazy.
insane.
It's
Like
something Star Wars has never even attempted to show us, and they're
no,
just going full force into it. Which, if you're gonna do it, don't tiptoe into it.
yeah, just
Just
go for it.
just go into it. You can all the little things that we're confused about now that can be fixed in a few sentences later on. Let's just get into it, and that's exactly what they've done. They've not made us sit around and wait. They've not done this whole thing of like, oh, I don't know, it's very dangerous. They're just doing it, and
Yep.
I think that helps the story so much, and it helps with there not being like this filler like language throughout the whole episode of like, oh, I don't know, let's just do it, and they did it perfectly, I think.
And the just do it, I think, was really good, kind of, for Ahsoka, right? She gets in that whale's mouth, the Purgle, and she just says, "Hey, I'm gonna trust." And I think that's the lesson she learned from Anakin is like, "Hey, you gotta just trust the Force, because even though Anakin turned to the dark side, and but he ended up saving. He did bring balance to the Force,
Yep.
and I think that's kind of to see him again, to see that, hey, it all worked out. It's what it was supposed to be. I think that really just allowed her to kind of trust in that overarching force, and then be like, hey, if it works out, it works out. If not, I can't do anything anyway.
Exactly. I think they did such a good job of redeeming her in the fact that she had felt she was so betrayed by the Force. She had felt like it was her fault that Anakin had turned because she wasn't there with him. They kind of fixed all of those emotions that she was having, and just she was like, you know what? And you saw the beautiful way that they showed it is if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, she had been wearing the gray and the dark colors throughout the whole season,
Yep,
and
welcome
then
back,
when she
Gandalf.
reemerges, she's Ahsoka the White, right? Kind of similar
Yeah,
to how Gandalf turns to Gandalf the White. You know, they've learned a lesson. They've learned their final lesson that they needed to learn to be elevated to this next state, and they just did it perfectly.
I completely agree. And then even to add on even more to that is just how, like, how impactful that Clone Wars scene was, where she is on the Battle of Mandalore, because that's when that's the moment when Anakin is turning completely
Yep.
to the dark side. Like, that's the moment that he lost. And I think her seeing that again, and then him being there with her to teach through that moment, I think, man, so well done. So
Well, and
well
it's
done.
funny too because not only is that in canon and everything when he originally turned, he turns again during that same fight. We see
Yes.
him turn the red lightsaber on. It's kind of all just happening over again in her mind. She is literally reliving it,
Yes,
but to a point where she's actually looking at it from a learning standpoint rather than not a sense of regret.
exactly. Yeah.
So they did. Dave Filoni just did it, and that was the episode he directed. And I think he just, I mean, some of the visuals we saw, him walking into the fog, and we would see him like turning into Darth Vader, and then back into Anakin, and then finally when they pop back into the world between worlds, when he's charging at Ahsoka, we see him turn back into Darth Vader and back into Anakin again. It was so cool. I mean, just watching those. I've watched that episode a couple times now, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah. And visually stunning, uh, and significance behind the visuals. To do something visually amazing is not as impressive as if it is so meaningful. The
Yeah, it,
visuals are
it, it
so
was
meaningful.
meaningful. Yep.
So,
Well,
but
before we move on from Ahsoka, I did want to get one other thing I've been seeing a lot, and it seems to be gaining a little bit of traction as far as theories go, is if you remember, Thrawn told Sabine he might be out there, but you might find him dead. I've been
yep,
seeing a lot of people say that Ezra is dead and that he is being reanimated by Night Sister magic.
false.
Now, I don't believe it, but I was curious as to what you think because they are seeming to lean pretty heavily into this Night Sister magic stuff.
So I completely disagree with that, because first off, Night Sister magic. When somebody is under Night Sister magic, it's evident,
Yep,
and he was completely
he was
free and
Ezra,
clear of that. Now, this is Night Sister magic on a different planet or a galaxy,
but
and we
kind of
haven't
their
really
home
seen it.
world, so somewhere you would think it would be even more powerful.
Right. So maybe that, if they do make that twist, but I just that's I think they actually didn't know how to find him.
I,
I'm
I
gonna be
I just
honest.
don't think Dave Filoni would a character as beloved as Ezra,
No.
someone who we've been waiting to see for years, wondering where he's been, what he's been doing, and it just so happens he's doing the most Ezra thing, hanging out with these little Ninja Turtles, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Amen.
I don't think he would ever in a million years do that. But it's something I keep seeing get brought up. I feel like more people are starting to say it as a
I think
possibility.
that's I think that's just about as much weight as saying that
Merrick was Star Killer.
Merrick. Well, say because people are saying Merrick
Oh,
was
Ezra.
Ezra. I
Yeah, yeah,
think that
yeah.
has a match weight. I said no chance, and this is one of those. No chance he's dead and being reanimated. I just
Well, and it's funny too. People have been
there's no
talking
point.
about.
There's no point to have her go out and find him, and oh he's dead and he's gonna kill. No, they would just kill her.
I
They would
agree.
just
Yeah.
kill her.
So
And if he is dead and reanimated, I'm mad. That's bad storytelling.
I will be. I think that would be so detrimental to the show. I don't see it happening, but I was curious to see what you thought about that. And it is funny though. We talked about the Merrick potentially being Ezra. As soon as I saw Enoch, I was like, "Oh gosh, here we go again
Please
with the
don't be her.
theories." I was so thankful that we finally actually saw Ezra because I knew all I was going to read for the next few days was,
Enoch
"Oh,
is
Enoch
Ezra.
is Ezra," and everyone would be like, "His name starts with an E. Ezra's name starts with." I was like, "It's." I was like, "Please,
Four
just please let
letters.
us get
Four
to Ezra."
letters.
Yeah, I was so thankful.
Oh,
Um,
that's so funny.
yeah, I was like, please. As soon as I saw him, I literally thought in my head, I said, "Here we go again." I was like, "This." I was like, "This can't be happening again." But luckily, they did us the service of let us actually see Ezra, so we didn't have to live through these few days of just. And the Merrick as Ezra was weeks. I mean, it wasn't just 1 week of things we had to wait through. I read that every day for like 2 or 3 till he died, which was what, episode 3, maybe episode
It was.
4.
He died in episode 4.
Okay, so
That's
for
when
4 weeks, I had to read that Merrick was Ezra. So I was like, I don't want to do this again.
I just like. I was like, who like thinks that that's a good idea?
I'm telling you, it's these. I'll be 100% honest with you, and I'm not hating. It's the people that really love the storytelling of the sequels. I feel like those are the people that are loving those theories.
I don't know anyone who loves the storytelling of the sequels
Dude, I'm telling you, if you get
because
on
that's not
Twitter,
storytelling.
there's a lot of defenders of the sequels.
No, it's a
Well, and
weak defense.
you did mention though, I don't want to hate on the sequels. We talked about what this could be for the sequels if Filoni is
Could
able
be
to do this prequel series to the sequels. I think it
right.
could really help the sequels.
I think it can really help the sequels in establishing Palpatine, breaking down the Republic.
Hmm.
But what it can't do is save the damage that was done to Luke, Han, and Leia. Like,
So for Han, I don't think he was. I can kind of see that they made him into like this not caring dad stuff.
for me, it's completely just his relationship with Leia. The fact that
Yeah,
they divorced, that kills me.
yeah.
Like his
I
entire character arc was settling down with her,
I feel
and then
like
they get a divorce, and like he abandons his kid, and
yeah.
whatever. Like
I do feel like
that's
I feel like there
ugh.
are some things that they can't fix, but I do think overall, as a whole story for the sequels, it definitely could help,
Yeah, yeah. You
just
can
in
bring it.
general.
You can bring it from absolutely atrocious to all right.
Yeah, it's
because
manageable, right?
because I am a very big 8 and 9 were just the worst.
I feel like 7 was good. I'll be honest. I think 7
So
was good. It was very
seven
much
was
so a
good
story
until
building.
8 and 9 happened.
And I feel like 9 was only bad because of how bad 8 was.
Uh,
Because those were two different directors.
well, it just doesn't. It was just they were just given such a bad hand with somehow Palpatine returns.
Oh, dude, that line will live in Star Wars infamy. I
Well,
don't think there'll ever be a line that is as known and as bad as that one.
so we're 45 minutes in, and we just heard Oscar Isaac's worst line. So maybe
Maybe it's not so bad. Are you there? I can't hear you, Zane.
all right. Well, that was a wonderful time for my headphones to die.
we'll fix that. We can just clip that.
Yeah, don't worry. Future Zane's gonna take care of that.
Yeah.
You're gonna be like, what? His headphones died? Because you're not just a clean clip there. But
Well, you mentioned right before your headset died. You mentioned Oscar Isaac, and perfect segue into what our little debate was about yesterday. So I feel like let's
yes.
just get into it.
So Jacob here has the opinion that the finale of Moon Knight not only was uh, fine, it was good. It was
It was
great.
great. It was
It was
great.
great for him, and it's not only uh, great, but it's his best MCU show.
No,
Number
my
one.
second best.
Okay, number two,
Number
only
two.
to Loki.
Yes.
So,
And if I will die on this hill if Loki just wasn't so important to the MCU and his story wasn't like actually building up the MCU, Moon Knight would be my number one. But Loki just has so much good content in it because of what it is. I have to put it at number one because it really is. I think the acting is amazing. They do a really good job of storytelling in it. I do love it. But I'm dying on this hill. Moon Knight is amazing. I love the finale, and I don't think you can argue that the acting is top tier.
so I watched Moon Knight as it came out weekly,
Me
and
too.
I loved it. I loved every second of it, except so the first episode I was thrilled, right? And I didn't get to see anything. And then the next episode we understand, hey, it's not just Steven, it's Mark, right? So,
Yeah, there's multiple personalities going on
and
here.
then we start seeing Mark, and we start seeing some Moon Knight. Now, I don't think we saw enough Moon Knight
of actual Moon Knight
action in the first 4 episodes. So when we watched episode 1, I thought episode 2 would be Mark's side of episode 1.
Okay.
I thought we would get to see every single second for Mark, just like we got to see every single second for Steven.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought we were going to get to see all of those amazing things that he did. We didn't. So I was a little disappointed, but we started seeing him. Now we fast forward to episode 4. He dies, but before he dies, we see, hey, somebody else killed that kid.
Yeah,
so,
on a cliff.
On a cliff. That is, and we've seen, and honestly, there was weird things before that he also did. But so now we automatically know that Jake is the next person. There's somebody else in there. And
that was the first time that they both acknowledged the fact that they didn't do what happened.
Yes, correct. But
that was the first
time. Working together. And then episode 5, we get to see them dead in the asylum with the hippo goddess, and then we get to see that third sarcophagus in there. Again, confirmation that there's a third one. We all know it's Jake Lockley.
Yep.
And then we go to the season finale, and we never see any action. And I'm not just talking about the Moon Knight death, like multiple personalities issue. We in episode 6, the season finale, we didn't see Arthur kill any of the other avatars for any of the other gods. He just takes them all out off screen. What? Okay, you're telling me he walked in there and killed them all? You killed all of the other avatars without even a sweat?
See, and that I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
And then our hero is literally in complete and total chaos, is about to die. Well, how is he going to get out of this? We'll never know. He just wakes up and everyone's dead.
That's you can't tell me though. I've gone back and I have watched that scene countless times.
I was so mad.
Just the whole him phasing out, and then all of a sudden he wakes up. He's got Harrow's cane in Harrow's head. He has no idea what happened. Even Layla is over there like, what did you just do?
Exactly.
He transfers back to Steven. Steven comes back out and he's like, what was that? Mark comes back, he's like, I have no idea. I love that sense of just what just happened. And I get what you're saying. I'm not gonna say you're wrong for feeling that you were let down by not seeing it. But you can't tell me there's not a sense of you that was just like, whoa, what did just happen?
I was just really, really annoyed that that's just the entirety of the show, though. I was always seeing what I didn't want to see,
And
and it was good. It was a
I
good
can see
show.
where you're coming
I
from.
want to see the good stuff. Like, if I'm going to watch it, I don't want Punisher. I don't want to watch Punisher. And then, off screen Punisher kills a bunch of people. And then, he shoot. It's like watching Punisher and never seeing where the bullets land. Right? We just see Punisher shooting his guns, and then you pan and everyone's dead, right? You never get to see any of the action.
And like I said, I get where you're from. And maybe it's just because of my love for the character. Moon Knight's he is high on my MCU list. Not even if we're talking about MCU, just superheroes in general. Moon Knight is very high on my list. So maybe I'm playing a little bit of bias to it, but dude,
I
I
really
remember when I
like his
watched that episode
comics.
with my wife, Danielle. When I watched that, I literally looked at her and I was just like, what just happened? Like I was
Exactly,
shocked.
you have no clue because you didn't see
But
it.
I I loved that feeling of just letting my imagination think of what happened.
Yeah,
Like it's just like they did a perfect job with the music. You kind of hear like that Moon Knight like music where it would do the phasing. I loved it. I got chills. I still get chills watching that scene. And I think that's what they were playing into. And like I said, I'm not going to say you're wrong for feeling the way you feel. I know you're not the only one that feels that way. I know there's a lot of people that feel that way about Moon Knight. But
I
me personally, I loved that. I loved that feeling.
I think I'm okay with that scene if they give us more Moon Knight in the first 5 episodes. If that, but that like that didn't. They didn't give us a lot of Moon Knight. They
Yeah.
didn't give us a lot of the things we wanted to see. And I think if they would have done that in the first 5 episodes, then that is an okay thing to do. But because you're longing for it, like you're wanting to see how awesome this superhero is, this avatar of the god Khonshu, and you want to see him do his thing, and it's just like then you're like, oh man, the finale, like the most amazing. Oh, it's over.
See, I do think though, you did mention we didn't get a whole lot of Moon Knight throughout the series. When we did see him,
It
it
was
was
amazing.
spectacular.
It was
It was
amazing.
it was so good. Just the way he moves, his fighting style. You do have to admit, in the season finale, I know it wasn't much. We did get to see Steven and Mark finally playing to the strengths of both of them. Having powers. We would see them jump back and forth in fights to be more.
Yeah, they accepted each other, and they
Yes,
learned how to work together instead of in opposition,
yes.
and that was incredible, incredible. I just wish we would have got more. And maybe that's me being selfish. Maybe that's
Well,
me
and
being selfish and saying, "Hey, I needed more." Like, and just so our listeners, if you're still listening at this point, know I have it high. I have it as like number 4 in
mhm.
my ratings, which we should go through our ratings, but you have to watch all the MCU shows before we do that.
Yeah, I still
Um,
have a couple I got to catch up on.
so, but like it was a very, very good show, and I really liked it. It just could have been great. It could have been my favorite. It
I
could have
will
been
say
great.
though, I think you can even agree with this. The acting that Oscar
Oh,
Isaac did, I
oh, it's
literally mouth on the floor some of those episodes watching him play two characters and instantly switching between them without there even being a cut. He was just doing it.
oh.
It was amazing.
So honestly, I think acting. So I think he's acting uh, is better than Tom Hiddleston's Loki,
Oh,
which is saying
I
something.
100%. Yep.
Because Tom is amazing,
Yep,
but
he is.
for Oscar Isaac on this character, it's just fantastic. And then um, the fighting and the visuals were amazing.
Yeah,
There
they
was
were.
never a moment where I thought, hey, like, oh man, he looks bad or that looks bad, which I've done on a lot of shows. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I have a lot of issues with because the visuals are just so terrible. But that's not the case here, and it was really good. I just wanted more. I'm stingy.
What I feel like probably the scene that you really notice his acting is, I forget which episode it is, but it's the episode where he's going through. I guess he's in the asylum and he's going back through his like childhood,
Oh
and we
man,
see him standing
yes.
outside of his old like house, his old apartment or whatever you would call that in the streets. And he
I
finally,
mean,
that's when he realizes that when he makes the second personality.
yeah, his first switch, his first time
Yes,
he ever creates Steven.
yes. I
Oh
remember
my
looking
goodness.
another moment. I looked at Danielle and I was like, "This is some of the best acting I have ever seen."
And honestly, one of the best pieces of content to ever breach the subject of mental disability,
Oh,
especially for multiple personalities.
yeah,
And
it was great.
episode 5 on its own was so I looked at my wife in that moment when we watched episode 5, and I was like, that's some of the hardest hitting television I've ever watched. And there was a talking hippo. Like,
Dude, you just hit the nail on the head. Like that, how emotional was that episode? And we had a talking hippo in it.
I was like, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm like, am I crying at a TV show with a talking hippo? Like,
Dude, which we're bringing it back. I mean, Moon. I can see why you have it. What your complaints about it, but overall as a show, they did.
yes,
It was
yeah,
amazing.
it was
It
good.
was.
It was
It was
very,
very
very good.
good. Yeah,
And they better get a season 2. Is all I'm gonna
dude.
say.
The
Because
fact it hasn't even been talked about is
it's
so
so.
disappointing to me.
And really, Marvel really needs to focus on their good qualities and stop focusing on their bad.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about moments where we never felt like in Moon Knight we were like, oh, that looked bad. I didn't even finish She-Hulk, but the
We
first few episodes I watched of it, I was like, the quality is just not there. The
we don't
CGI
we
was
don't have to talk
bad.
about She-Hulk.
Yeah. I mean, so I think Marvel, and they are making strides. I think with them slowing production, I think everything is going to come out much more polished. There's going to be
I
more
think
hands on deck.
I do.
Um,
So there's two issues here with that though. With their slowing production, we don't get titles like Moon Knight
but yep, because some stuff's going to have to get cut.
because it doesn't play to the bigger MCU right now. And
Yeah.
I think unless it plays to the bigger MCU, people don't care. And that's not my take, but I like because I if it doesn't have like What If, I adored What If. I think it was
Hmm.
some amazing content. I can just enjoy the story even though it has no consequences whatsoever. I love
Yep.
it. And I saw somebody looked at the new episode list for season 2, which drops later this year, and they were like, "No one cares about any of this. We wanted to see this and this and this and this." And I'm like, eh, "Just be happy you're getting new content, dude. Like that, like it's. I
Well,
just love the content. I
and
love the
especially the
amount we're
state of
getting.
how much they are probably going to slow production. Anything we're going to get at this point, we should just be trying to enjoy because it probably is going to get a little slow for a while. But we do have probably what the most anticipated show coming in a couple weeks. So
I mean, you're number one.
yeah,
My
my
number
number
one.
one. It's your number one.
It's my
So
number one.
I think Loki season 2 is just going to be
It's next week.
crazy.
It's next week, right?
Next week.
All
So we're
right.
not even 2 weeks away. We're less than that. I mean,
Less than 2 weeks by a day, so it's the 6th.
it comes out on Wednesday.
It comes out on the 5th actually. So they're doing the Ahsoka treatment and
They're
giving
doing
it
Tuesday.
a Thursday night
Oh, they're doing
release.
Thursday. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't interfere with Ahsoka, which finale is the 3rd,
Dude, and think about that. We're going to have the finale of Ahsoka
and the start of Loki
in this
in the
start.
same
I
week.
mean, tell me Disney is not like, I say a lot of things about Disney's like production line and like when they release stuff, oh, they are treating us with
Yeah,
that right there. I mean, as if I couldn't be sad that Ahsoka was leaving, I instantly have something to bring me back. Like, oh, now I have something I can be excited for again. I
yeah.
don't have
We'll have too
that
much to
waiting.
talk about that week.
we are going to have a lot to talk about that week. And like I said, like we talked about before, that might be an hour and a half episode because there's going to be a lot to discuss. And I know we did a lot of talking about a few different things in this episode. Hopefully, once we get some more things going, we'll have more specific things we'll be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get a, you'll get to know us, and we won't have to explain as much about what we do in our history as much. Even
Yeah.
though you didn't really get to know us much, but we did get to talk about our history of viewing some of our favorite content, and then how we're enjoying some of our shows currently. But we are currently going to make this one an hour and a half, Jake, if we don't.
Well, I think we're at a good point to let off. I mean, we got to talk about our biggest thing right now, Ahsoka. You kind of got to learn a little bit about us and the fact of what we differ on. You know,
Yep.
I differ on the fact that I don't mind the imagination stuff, whereas you do more than I do. So they're going to get to learn stuff just from us talking,
Yeah.
which is fun. But what are we at right now?
We're at an hour and 5 minutes.
Hour and 5 minutes. I think that might be the perfect spot to call this first episode.
Well, it's probably an hour and a minute for that,
Oh yeah,
headphone glitch.
for the headphone dying on us.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
So
All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us for your weekly fix. This is us finishing up the drip chamber, and we're gonna send it out for y'all in in a little bit.
yeah, hopefully you guys see this. Hopefully it doesn't take as long to get out as it took for us to record it. But
Oh my. Well, you'll see it next year if that's the case.
yeah, but again, thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, it will be a year from now. But yeah, I think that's a perfect spot for us to stop. Again, thank you guys for watching, and this has been episode 1 of the Weekly Fix.